Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by Botanica candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, like this video, share it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and be sure to check out our membership program. Great video coming today about Ifa ingredients, right? And you're going to be hearing from my partner in crime, Mr. Phil, the podcast doctor, from time to time.
Hello. Ifa ingredients. So are we cooking an Ifa cake here?
No, that's going to be for another episode. But if we were, it wouldn't take any of this stuff. I tell you, it's some intense stuff. The flavors would be way too much to profile.
Oh, okay. All right. So I don't need to make a grocery list here.
No, and you don't need to share your phone number either.
That's so funny.
But yeah, man, I tell you, it's a really intimidating process when you go into a Botanica and you're looking at all these things and you couldn't be any more confused, you know? So what we want to do with this, I guess it's going to become a little mini series, because our inventory is so vast, there's no way we'd be able to cover everything in an hour or even 2 hours. So what we wanted to do with this video is, go over maybe 7 to 8 key ingredients so you can start getting your knowledge up, guys, and really understanding how to use these things, whether you're initiated or not. So the first thing we want to delve into is 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, or red palm oil. And periodically throughout the video, you're going to be seeing the images of the ingredient as well. And the majority of these can be purchased at Botanica Candles and More, right? So the red palm oil is an interesting ingredient because it is actually harvested from the oil palm, as it's known in Nigeria, Africa. If you ever see a bottle of it, you see it's produced in Nigeria, Ghana, as well as a big producer of it. And it's basically harvested from the fruit that this tree produces. So it's this nice, bright orange, reddish fruit. And, within it, you're actually going to find the sacred seeds of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, which are 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, right? So it's also the 𝗃𝗃 palm, right? And what happens is this fruit gets harvested and pressed. And when it gets pressed, it releases this nice orange reddish fat or grease or oil that is utilized the world over, not only for spiritual reasons, but in Africa, it's actually used to cook all of those wonderful Nigerian dishes, especially the Yoruba ones. And this is why this ingredient became so imperative to our practice of Ifa, because the Orishas at one point were human beings, and being that they first manifested in Africa, the cradle and dawn of civilization, they were eating African ingredients, of which the staple was red palm oil, or 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, as it's known. So you're going to notice in the Odie of 𝗃𝗶𝗷𝗶𝗍 was where 𝗃𝗏𝗏 actually married 𝗃𝗶𝗱, right? But originally he wasn't married to her. He was married to her sister, Odie. And Odie and 𝗃𝗏𝗏 actually they weren't very compatible. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was much more calm and tranquil, and Odie was a very intense personality of a woman. And then 𝗃𝗏𝗏's brother, Ogun, was married to Odie's sister, 𝗃𝗶𝗱. And Ogun and 𝗃𝗶𝗱 weren't that compatible either, because Ogun had characteristics that resembled more 𝗃𝗏𝗏's wife, Odie, and 𝗃𝗶𝗱 had characteristics that actually represented or were very similar to 𝗃𝗏𝗏. So, every now and again they'd double date and things like that, and they'd see each other at functions, where Ogun actually became infatuated with his brother's wife. And, an affair ultimately took place, where one day 𝗃𝗏𝗏 actually walked in on them, and he was completely appalled, where Ogun was very apologetic, Odie was not. And 𝗃𝗏𝗏 said, hey, man, if she wants to be with you, that's fine. I'm not mad at you. But Ogun said, how can I repay you, or what would you want in exchange? He said, well, give me your wife. And Ogun was like, oh, you wanted to be with her the whole time? He's like, no, it's not that. It's just, she was faithful to you the same way I was faithful to my partner. We'll probably be faithful to each other, and I hope you guys are with each other as well. And that's when 𝗃𝗏𝗏 married 𝗃𝗶𝗱, or married the red palm oil. And that's why till this day, Odie, or black palm oil, which is harvested from the seed within the seed, or the fruit within the seed of 𝗃𝗃, through pulverizing it, manifested. So 𝗃𝗏𝗏, didn't want anything to do with that, neither socially nor metaphysically or metaphorically, where black palm oil is still extremely taboo for Ifa. I've never seen a case where it actually takes it. But in the Odu 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀, when we translate the name, 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗃 basically means Ogun and Adi unified, or the black palm oil. And it made a lot of sense for Ogun with the iron and things like that. And he coveted that person in this sign. So the red palm oil is accepted by many Orishas. Ogun still accepts it, but Orunmila, the warriors especially, Osun, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶, believe it or not, takes red palm oil. In Africa, they consecrate him with it because he is Orunmila's staff. Being that the Babalawos are the ones who give Osun, Orunmila and Osun have to eat the same things. Osun, ironically, eats red palm oil as well. Shango, of course, he was always in the palm. Oya eats what practically Shango eats. Yemaya as well. Basically, the Orishas, and Babaluaye loves it. But the Orishas that do not are going to be known as Orisha Funfun, as they're known, right? Or the white Orishas. But even some of them do. But the ones that definitely do not are going to be like Obatala, especially Orisha 𝗀𝗃𝗍. And for the most part, from what I've seen, Odudua either. But, that's a lineage thing. But for the most part, no. As far as appearance, we've gone over that. Orishas that utilize it. As far as use, right? For the longest time, people thought that you could perform witchcraft to people with red palm oil. Red palm oil is actually the opposite. Red palm oil is to actually remove witchcraft, because witchcraft is characterized by temperature and heat and things like that. So the red palm oil is actually utilized to cool situations down. That's why we offer it to Eshu to cool his hunger, right? But in Nigeria, from what I've heard from some of my teachers, is that it's actually used as an anti-fever remedy, where they'll cover young children in red palm oil to be able to lower their temperature, or even, grown people as well, depending on how intense the fever is taking place. Apart from that, it has a bunch of spiritual uses, but it's mostly used to actually remove witchcraft, to appease the Orishas that are somewhat gluttonous, such as Eshu, so we don't have to offer them a blood sacrifice every day. And overall, for cooking, believe it or not. So these are the various uses of red palm oil, amongst others, but these are the most common.
Interesting.
Definitely.
It's crazy when you just think of a regular ingredient has all of these properties and meanings behind it, I bet you if I asked you what nutmeg meant, you probably would tell me something.
If I could find the story on it, or if I can get the Yoruba name on it, probably, yeah. But
wow, okay.
People don't even realize that we have so much, you just go in your pantry and you're probably looking, well, this might get me through Sunday dinner. When in reality, you might have a bunch of spiritual ingredients right there, And as we delve more into the ingredients, it's going to be really like, wow, why are these things so basic? And the reason they're basic is because these were the things that were present at the dawn of humanity. We had fruit from the palm tree, and the one we're getting into next, which is going to be shea butter, well, that comes from the shea tree and the fruit from there. And, people utilized what they had, and these things helped us survive and helped us really progress, and that's why, they're blessed, right? So that's that with red palm oil. Now we're going to delve into shea butter, which is known as Odie. And more than likely, everybody knows what shea butter is up until this point.
Yep.
It's a great moisturizer. It's wonderful on skin, and it's an ingredient that was identified within Ifa very early on. One of the Odus that speaks of it at a very, face value is the Odu Afun, where it says the Ache of Odie was born. Now, mind you, Odie is also an Ache, or it's also a blessed ingredient, just like the rest. It's characterized, it's white. I have seen it yellow as well, but the one we utilize the most is the white one. And, in the New World, it was actually replaced for cocoa butter or cacao, which is a legitimate replacement due to the characteristics it has. So they're both legitimate. And who really dominates this ingredient is going to be the Orisha Obatala. Odudua as well has a lot to do with it. And one of the Odus that speaks of Odie in general is the Odu 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗏. And the Odu 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗏 was actually where the harvesting and trafficking of Odie first manifested, where people performed divination, where this ingredient was harvested and innovated, where it was shown to have all these benefits, especially when it came to the head, right? Where people would utilize it for their skin, or they would rub it on their head for spiritual purposes to bring tranquility, calmness, clear thought, advantageous thought, you know, all of the things to kind of create the condition for an optimum or optimal mental environment and mental hygiene. Cooking in it, not so much. I haven't seen. Now, mind you, the offerings to 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 can be cooked in it, and as well as, you know, covered in it as well. Dudua is partial to it as well. The Orisha Funfun are very partial to this. People like 𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗍, Oshun consumes it as well. This is an ingredient that they utilize pretty frequently to kind of reiterate their hygiene and their cleanliness. 𝘄cie consumes everything, so it can be used for 𝘄cie. That's actually in the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗲. There's an 𝘄cie that consumes purely shea butter, ideally. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 as well. You know, and it's also an ingredient that is used for fertility. It's an ingredient that actually makes reference to the male reproductive specimen, the same way red palm oil makes reference to the woman's menstruation, where red palm oil should not be utilized in any facet by pregnant women, right? When a pregnant woman is going through her stages, during that time leading up to childbirth, she should use shea butter instead, thus reiterating, obviously, her significant other's desire of procreating and whatnot. But it's utilized quite a bit in those regards for fertility, or, you know, being very careful to not use it at moments when it can be taboo. But shea butter, as well as cacao or cocoa butter, are used quite a bit, especially by 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 initiates. It's used for things of the head. You're going to see it in a lot of offerings to the head, and it's a pretty straightforward ingredient, but you can either see them in like these golden tubes, the way we have them at the Botanica, or the shea butter sometimes comes harvested raw, right? So, yeah.
So if it's harvested raw, is it in a butter too, or?
Yeah, it's like very crude, and it's wonderful, man. I mean, you know, another group of people that utilize this pretty heavily is us, the Babalaos, as well as the drummers of Bata, because, you know, through the motion of pulling the king or playing the drum, I mean, you know, it taxes our hands quite a bit, and it has healing properties, man. I tell you, it's not just the moisturizing aspect of it. Like, my hands feel better after I utilize this, so it's a very beneficial ingredient, not only from a health standpoint, but spiritually. I mean, it's beyond necessary.
And I don't know if how many people are African Americans in this, but cocoa butter will never run out. Like, you had that big bottle. You know what I'm talking about?
I had the old school one with the dollar one. You know, and it had the big seed on it.
Yeah, you know? I still got the same bottle from 1988.
Hey, so man, I got to keep it a buck with you, man. I used to actually massage my grandmother's feet. You know what I'm saying? When she had arthritis and stuff like that, and that was in heavy rotation. She wouldn't let me use another one. I'm like, I got the real stuff. She's like, it's not better than this.
Yeah, no, that's the OG.
Word.
Yeah. All right, what we got next?
So the next ingredient that we're going to delve into, we don't have a liquor license at the Botanica, so this isn't a placement, but it's Odie. Okay. And Odie is alcohol, any type of alcohol. Hennessy, you know, Belvedere, anything that has, you know, that fermentation process that, you know, has the capability of transforming somebody's behavior or, you know, emotional state. So Odie or any type of alcohol was actually identified as being used in the Odu of Otura Irete, where there's actually a verse that is prayed over it ceremonially to activate it spiritually. So how is alcohol used? It's a libation. It's for all of the different Orishas. All of them do consume. I can't think of one that doesn't right now. And most people will jump up and be like, well, what about 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶? Well, that's really good because there's a specific type of alcohol that 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 does not prefer. He does take white alcohols, though. I probably wouldn't give it tequila because it's a little sticky. Like, try to keep it like thin, like a rum or a gin, preferably, maybe even a vodka. I don't know. But there is a specific alcohol known as emu, which is palm wine, right? Which is another word. And emu is completely taboo for 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 because it was what 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 utilized to refresh himself, and he became inebriated, thus leading to the folly of the way he was sculpting human minds as 𝗀𝗃𝗍, right? And it ultimately led to him losing the position of Alafin Aye to Odua, right? Because Odua was sober and very correct, and he didn't overindulge. So that's another word right there and another product right there. Emu. Emu is very partial to Ogun as well. He's a huge fan of it. Emu is identified in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, where it's known as they were in the land of 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, they were the harvesters of palm wine. So, Ogun was very partial to it, but Obatala, absolutely not. But, the gin and the rum and all these different things, first and foremost, they're to awaken the Orisha. When we spit the rum or any type of alcohol in the Orisha, it's to grab their attention. If somebody spits something on the back of your neck, you're going to wake up and be like, oh, man, you need me, or you're trying to get my attention. So with the Orishas, it's the same thing. Things like this are offered for happiness, right? Usually when people have a drink in moderation, you're feeling good, and you're having a good time, and, all is well. They also say that it's good to offer the Orishas things when you want something in return. They say the best time to ask somebody for something, the Yoruba say, the best time to ask somebody for something is when they're under the influence. So that's all in the 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗍𝗁, right? So, you offer it to the Orishas, especially in moments when you're trying to receive things, right? So it speaks of all that. But a good drink never killed nobody.
Yeah, it's unfortunate you can't sell any there, but
that license is heavy, dog.
Yeah, it's expensive in Orange County.
Yeah, and it's understandable why. They got to moderate it, but it's heavy. But there's a bunch of actual lines that are geared towards Orisha. Like I remember I used to walk into the liquor stores and you'll see Ogun rum or La Mulata rum and stuff like that. And, some of it was pretty good. Now, not for leisure, but to work with. Now, there's some that I'll never forget, man. And shout out to all my Jamaican people out there. I just got done eating a patty before this episode. But there is a rum that is so strong. I don't know if it's, I don't even want to say the name, but it has like the Jamaican flag on it and whatnot. And I remember I have a godson who's from the Bahamas. He brought me that because he had an offering to do to Ogun, right? So I'm thinking, the hardest thing in the world is Bacardi 151. Like,
Yeah, right? Like, or Everclear, right?
Bro, I'm telling you, man, when this stuff hit my lips, it went into the nerves in my mouth. And I wasn't able to spit it. I think it kind of fell out, And I said, good God, man, what did you bring me? Gasoline? He said, nah, man, this is for Ogun. It's got to be strong. I said, I'm gonna have to end up pouring it because I can't even get it out. Too strong.
Wow.
It was rough. It was rough. And they make some great rums over there, but that, I'm not saying people can't enjoy it. It's a great product, but oh my God, you got to be built for that. Many a domino table have been broken over that bottle.
Oh man,
I'm telling you, you know what I'm saying? So shout out to all of them.
Wow.
But yeah, so any type of alcohol, very popular within Orisha. And you really can't get through a ceremony without it, and it makes reference to, the original forms and expressions of leisure and enjoyment and what it represents. And, there's definitely a spiritual quality to it because, as you drink with, hopefully within moderation, it takes you to another plane, But for all my spiritual practitioners, you also want to know how to function without it as well, because you might show up at a misa where there's no drink. I mean, in my Ifa ceremonies, we don't, partake in anything until the ceremony's done. So, it's very important to always maintain the line of ethic and professionalism, even though, obviously this is a part of our job.
Nice. All right. So what we got next here?
Next, we have Afun. Afun is a calcified rock that's actually found in Nigeria, Yoruba land. It is known as a representation of Obatala. And when you see it, it's hard, it's white, it's a chalk, basically, and it really reiterates Obatala's character as being, a stern father and, pure and, all of these different things. It's used a lot in his offerings. For those who are unaware, this is also the famous 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Now, I'd like to go over something because a lot of people say, no, 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 is pounded eggshells.
Okay.
It is not. It is actually a replacement for this original rock, where there's an aspect of 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 that is in common with this rock that allows us to utilize it instead of the African one if we don't have it. So you'll see it come in like these little souffle cup type coverings on the bottom, and it's utilized. It's a white chalk, right? What is it used for? It's used to tranquilize, calm. It's going to have a lot of similarities with Odie, but, you know, tranquility, calmness, clear thought, spiritual hygiene. It's very good for cleaning and things like that. But this ingredient, one of the odus where it was identified is in the odu 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, or 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸𝗀. And what happened is in that sign, things weren't getting buried. They would just leave them there, and this was causing a huge epidemic, right? And when divination was performed, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 was revealed, where Ifa said that they needed to utilize Afun to be able to cover the bodies of the cadavers that they had sacrificed, which is why after we feed gungun, at the very end, everybody cleans themselves with 𝗃𝗃𝗃, and we sing, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃 𝗃𝗃𝗃 Nilesung, manile, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃 nilesung, which means they sleep in the house. They sleep in the house. We cover them with Afun while they sleep. And this was to keep, you know, the pestilence and everything from rising from the bodies. You see this in modern day farms where, you know, they'll sprinkle the ground with like this white powder. I think it's called cal or something like that. It's calcium. It's okay. to kill the bacteria within the ground. And, you know, the Yoruba people identified this, you know, thousands of years ago. But in real world context, it's for cleansing. Some people write on themselves with it to, like, you know, take away negativity or to scare away negative spirits. It's mostly used for that. It's great for baths because it dissolves, you know, in white baths and whatnot. So it's really wonderful in that regard when it comes to cleansing. So that's Afun, right? Now, the next set of ingredients that we'll get into are kind of seen in conjunction, right? It's known as 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. And the word 𝗃 means rat, the word 𝗃𝗃 means fish, and the word 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗃 means corn. Now, why are all these things associated with each other? Because these are ingredients, you know, which is the 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, or the smoked rat, fish, and corn. These are things that are very popularly used to appease 𝗃𝗃𝗃, or 𝘃𝗵𝗃. The reason being is because he's partial to all of these different foods. Now, when we look at 𝘃𝗵𝗃 and the rat, I mean, it's very common to see stories about when he actually consumed them. You know, one of them is in the Odie Wodiwosaso, where the rats were sacrificed. There's various signs that speak of that, as well as in the Odie Babao was where 𝘃𝗵𝗃 consumed fish for the first time. But overall, why is rat and fish used is because in the Odie Babao was where it was identified that these two ingredients bring prosperity and longevity, as well as fertility. Why is this? Because they were identified as the two species that will be most present on earth, in water, and on land. Nothing procreates like a fish. Nothing procreates on land at the pace of a rat. So this is why these things are used. So it has a lot to do with prosperity, money, fertility, longevity. The corn as well made its way in there. You know, in the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗃 was where the corn became prosperous, as well as the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃. So they're used in conjunction because 𝗃𝗃𝗃 has a lot to do with bringing in prosperity. The corn is seen as a fertility item as well, because if you notice, the corn has one husk and a bunch of different kernels. So it has to do with fertility and opening up and progress and whatnot. So that's where these ingredients really become key, and you're not going to find a Botanica that doesn't have these things, right? Another very important, and mostly, before we move on, the rat, fish, and corn are basically consumed by every Orisha. There's very few, I can't even think of one right now that doesn't consume it. So it can be incorporated, if asked, with practically any offering. It's very eclectic. So apart from that ingredient, you also have something known as Atare, which is the guinea pepper or the alligator pepper. Now, when you look at a Botanica, usually, especially a Lukumi one, it'll be in a Ziploc bag, and there'll be a bunch of little black dots in there that are the peppers, right? And they're called alligator pepper because they're very spicy, right? They bite. So where it actually comes from is something known as Atare, which is actually the pod of Atare or pepper, where if you open it, it's like this brown, covered type pod. When you open it, it's almost like a pomegranate. Like you see all these sections of just Atare or Guinea pepper. So just like that, it became a fertility symbol, representing the womb and, utilizing it to scare away anything that could interrupt procreation. It also is utilized to be able to scare away the 𝗷𝗍𝗶𝗍 or the negativities, death, sickness, loss, tragedy, because 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗏 threw the guinea pepper at these things to be able to scare them away because they didn't want any problems because the pepper was ferocious. For the longest time, people said you could utilize this to do witchcraft to people. Once again, might not be the most effective method because those same ingredients are what send away the negativities that you might be trying to send somebody, but you shouldn't be. The guinea pepper as well is for war or self-defense. In the Odie of 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗏 or 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗏 or 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁 was where the people wanted to go to war with guinea pepper, but none of them could last a war with him more than 3 days, which makes reference to if you choose one of these things, you're not going to be able to overcome very quickly, if at all. So it's utilized for self-defense as well. It can be incorporated to overcome things. So it's a very important ingredient that you're going to see very heavily in a Botanica for sure. Ingredients. Another very important one is going to be salt. Salt was identified in the Odie of Baba Ifa, and it was utilized not only to bring happiness and flavor, especially when it came to revealing somebody's destiny in their Santeria ceremony, especially for babies to help activate Odie or the head. It's utilized for cleansing. It's utilized to also maintain the blood from coagulating, especially, in some clans in Nigeria, rather than feeding the Orisha directly, they'll feed it in a separate receptacle and throw in salt to start whisking it around to keep it from coagulating, thus keeping the 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗂𝗃𝗃 at large and at bay before putting it on the Orisha. So it's to preserve. Apart from that, though, salt is taboo for the Orisha 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 as well as the Orisha Odie, right? And the Odie, I believe, of Afun was where 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 recognized salt as not being compatible with his organism. And in the Odie of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 was where Odudua said he wanted nothing to do with that, or, believe it or not, pepper either. That's what the Pataki says. Because when they served it to him, he flipped out. So when it comes to salt, you're going to notice it used very heavily, like with the Orisha Eshu. 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏 consumes it as well. And when divination was done for salt, it was done for happiness, because salt ultimately is actually a substance. It's a drug, right? When we look at the Odie of 𝗿𝗍𝗶, it says that the white powders, however they manifested, usually have some type of intoxicating effect upon the human body, and salt is no different. Once the brain actually consumes salt, it will never be the same again. So, it's to be able to have all of those same properties where you're unforgettable, where you're trying to become notable, where you're trying to unify. All of these things were identified in the Odie of Baba Ifa. And it's practically consumed by all of the Orishas that I mentioned, other than the ones that I didn't. And, it's utilized in that regard. Other ingredients, you're going to see a lot of different things when you come into stores and whatnot. I think a good one to bring up as well is soap, right? Soap is very heavily used within Ifa and Yoruba culture. It's known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏. And the word 𝗃𝗶𝗱 means, obviously, the soap. And dudu is the one that you see most commonly, which is the black soap. Now, sometimes you're going to see it in bar form, but the one I really prefer is the one that comes in a soft format within a canister. Why is that? Because especially for us, the 𝗃𝗏𝗏s, for the regular person who wants to just use black soap, you can still get benefits from it, even spiritually, just using the stuff. There's been plenty of times when I've been in a consult and I've just asked, does the person need to bathe with black soap?
I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah, no, it's completely blessed, because in the Odie of 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was actually where he arrived in the land of, I believe it was Ijebu. And when he got there, people were going through it. Like, their hygiene was off, but more importantly, their spiritual hygiene. And they were looking for something that they could utilize, to be able to cure themselves. And when he performed divination for the town, his own Odie was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to prepare soap because that was kind of his thing. He would prepare spiritual soaps and whatnot. Some people say black soap is in, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, the Odie Baba Ifa speaks of soap as well. And he utilized it and he gave it to the people with the incantations, and they started not only being able to clean themselves, but to purify themselves spiritually. And through this soap and through his products, they were able to benefit in a way where they actually made him king. So the black soap, some people say 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 shouldn't be washed in it. I don't know. That's a little bit debatable. Or cleaned with it. That's a little bit debatable because it was the first soap, so 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 had to use it as well. But you'll see soap such as that. Castile soap, which has a coconut base, is very, very popular as well. But you're going to see black soap utilized a lot by the 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲s because, we'll put our 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 in there and we'll really start making some wild stuff with it. So, yeah.
Isn't like the black soap like the charcoal soap?
There might be some charcoal in it. I mean, when you actually look at the ingredient list, it's pretty wild. It's basically a compost that actually has these great benefits. So they make it out of the most basic materials. I think there's banana peels in there. There's red palm oil in there as well. It's
really?
Actually confectioned out of it. When you look at the ingredient list, you're going to be like, wow, look at all the stuff that goes into this, And I use it from time to time again. It has great effects on the skin and, overall, very positive, very spiritual ingredient that we really can't function without it. I mean, without black soap, the religion kind of stops moving altogether. So there's no way to be able to replace it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, we've gone over soap at this point now. When we look at the different ingredients via Orisha, you kind of go each Orisha, and each Orisha kind of has their own things that they like, right? So when we look at, for example, someone such as, let's say Shango, where, his preferred ingredient as far as what to drink and whatnot is a dry wine, right? Or oticana, as it's known, or vino seco. So he's going to be partial to it as well as 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲. And the reason being is because 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 was constantly looking for other liquids that weren't just pure H2O, because when the water would hit his sores,
it would sting, wouldn't it?
It would sting quite a bit. So, he's very partial to that as well. Another great ingredient that we haven't touched on yet is honey. Honey, I was reading an article recently that they found some ancient honey from Egypt, and someone actually dared try it and nothing happened. It had preserved perfectly.
Really? Someone ate some
5,000-year-old honey, and they did very well afterwards. It's just incredible, all the ancestral knowledge that Africa had, because, the Egyptians were some of the first people to utilize honey as medicine. They also utilized it to make beer. All of these things were innovated by these people, if not other parts of Africa as well. But the honey is very closely associated with Oshun, obviously. And where it was identified was in the Odie Baba 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲. There's a verse in Isese that speaks about it, I think in the Odie Afun, if I'm not mistaken. But within our spirituality, it's in the Odie Baba 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲. And what happened there was Oshun had a son, and he was very spoiled. And she would feed him honey all day because, every time he would cry, she would give in and give him the honey, until she realized he was spoiled and he was getting a little bit, a
little bit fat,
a little big. He was getting a little big. And, she had to wean him off of it, and it would cause him to cry. And that's why in the Odie Baba 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 it says, there's nothing happier than a child eating honey. That's why kids like sweets and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the honey, as far as what it's utilized for, it's going to be very much affiliated with Oshun. You could use it in a fertility bath. Some people, before a spiritual process, they'll put some honey on their tongue so that, their divinations and what they say are very sweet and accepted by the client, so it's not too harsh. There's not one Orisha that I can think of that doesn't receive honey. It's used for, apart from the fertility, being able to find a partner, and also to attract prosperity overall, because, you know, if we're talking about the substance of honey and the stickiness of it all, it's to bring the positivity towards us in a way where it's retained and we don't lose it or have that turnover. So those are all the uses for that.
I think honey is my favorite one so far.
Yeah, it's my favorite too. It's so crazy, brother, because I ended up being initiated into Oshun. I couldn't get enough of the stuff. I mean, I'd have a spoon of it. I mean, and it's to the point now where, as I'm, you know, a little bit older and an adult, I actually collect honey. Like I'll see like a farmer's market and I'll stop and I'll see if there's a honey I've never tried before, like an orange blossom one, or, you know, they even have a tobacco honey that I haven't tried yet. Like, there's a lot of really incredible stuff that happens within that industry, because it can be infused with so many things. I've had blueberry honey before. Like, it's just really amazing stuff. But I liked it even before I knew, you know. But when we talk about ingredients, why do we utilize these things? We utilize these things ultimately. We can never lose sight of that we're utilizing them to appease and propitiate, right? The Orishas. Now, apart from that, we utilize them for the benefits that it can provide us through us interacting with them on a personal level, whether it be a bath, incorporating it into our routine somehow. But that's why it's so key to understand the concepts behind each ingredient so that we're getting the results that we're looking for. And we don't know that unless, you know, we're oriented on it. So that's why it was so key for us to pull out this video, because, you know, we're very blessed at the Botanica to have great representatives and associates who explain things for those who aren't as versed and are learning, right? But for all of the online community, we wanted to come out with this information, apart from more that we will, so that, you know, you could be versed and at least have an idea when you're going into to a Botanica. I remember when I worked at Home Depot in the flooring department, and sometimes people would come in and have absolutely no idea what they needed, you know. So it's about,
that was me.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in the flooring department, bro. Like, I learned a little bit. One guy invited me to learn how to lay tile, but, you know, I think I was doing something else, you know, whatever 19-year-olds were doing 10 years ago. But yeah, you know, you just want to be prepared so that when you go in, you can at least explain to the professional, if you're not versed yet to that point, enough to where they can point you in the right direction. So, you know, and learning about the ingredients is a big part of practice as well, because, for example, if someone has an issue, I don't know, with, let's say, you know, I don't know, a partnership, or a woman is having issues procreating, I might not recommend red palm oil to her. I might be like, you need to incorporate honey, or, you know, any of these different things. When you know how things are used and why they're used, you can just give better recommendations for other people or yourself, so that you can get those results, because these are miraculous things.
So people can come to the store, or they have to do a consult? Like, Kathy does that, or is that just you and Erica? Like,
no, we all consult. Kathy's doing the cards. She's killing it, by the way. Shout out to her. Erica still does readings from time to time when she's not, you know, really pumping real estate.
Yeah.
I'm still available. But, you know, it might not necessarily require a consultation. You know, you might have your sign already. Like, for example, the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲 says the person should rub their hands with shea butter every morning to call prosperity. That person doesn't need a reading to go buy the shea butter or the cocoa butter to rub on their hand. So if you know your routines and you know the concepts behind things, and as long as you're not delving into ceremonial practice without a license, I mean, the doors are open and you can really go to town.
Well, speaking of doors, the elevator door is opening.
Oh my God, you're good.
Perfect segue.
Yes, sir.
All right, so guys, if you are interested in joining our membership program, it's really simple. It's this little button right under this video that says join. Join the quite a few members we have. We have 3 different tiers that offer all different perks for you. So let's give a shout out to the people that show love to you, Joseph. We got VIPs. We got Dennis Diaz.
Dennis, thank you, man.
We got Lisa B.
Lisa B, VIP.
𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲,
my man.
We got Divine Destiny Healing.
Thank you.
We got 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲.
Mel.
We got Amanda Rivera.
Oh, man, long time.
Clear Life Movement.
Thank you.
That's an OG as well.
Oh, there's a couple there, yeah.
We got some super fans. We got a shout out, Filipino Olowo.
Yeah.
Kenya Hutton.
Kenya, thank you again.
And I am Justina.
Guys, BotanicaCandlesandMore.com is up and running for all your spiritual services and needs. The audio podcast is available on all major platforms. Be sure to let somebody know about the program, like we said. Like this video, share it, comment on it. Be sure to subscribe. And until next time, see the light.